Hey guys, welcome back to RC Resto Mod. And right now, our Slash looks like this. Yeah, probably wasn't completely necessary to take it this far apart, but I wanted you to see that we could completely take this thing apart and put it back together here on the show, and you can do it at home too. It's relatively easy. It's just a matter of staying with it. And when we go back together, there's resources that I'll show you how to do it so that you can find out exactly what order everything goes in, what needs to go on first, so that you have a pretty easy time putting it back together and it becomes a bit tedious rather than anything being hard. The video you're fixing to see is about taking the car apart. And originally, I had a section on taking the front apart, the rear apart, and then what's left of the chassis. And when I edited it all together, it was 87 minutes long, and ain't nobody got time for that. So we're gonna do front suspension today, and then in the next couple of days, hopefully either tomorrow or the next day, we'll do rear suspension, and then within 1 or 2 days after that, we'll put out the third one for the center of the chassis. I'm trying to do a better job with these videos and get more proficient with it. Now, my good friend Noel said that he didn't feel the love with my first video because I didn't make good enough contact with the camera. Well, I hope you feel it now, buddy. Anyway, on with the disassembly. All right, guys, the next thing we're going to do is begin to disassemble our backyard basher, because the first thing we want to do is take it completely apart, and then we'll clean and inspect each part as we put it back together, so that when it's done, we'll have something that's very reliable and shouldn't give us as much trouble because it won't have broken or defective or worn out parts put back in it. We're just going to make it right from the start. It'd be basically the same thing as having a brand new truck, but at a much better price. One thing that's really cool about the Slashes is that they're pretty modular. So let's start by removing the front bumper. And once again, we're just going to drop all the hardware in there. I'm not going to try to keep it separated one thing from another. I'll show you a trick to make sure that screws go back in the right hole later. And that's actually pretty important, because if you put especially when you're working on the transmission, if you put a screw that's in too long, you can actually lock the thing up where it won't run anymore. Now, remember when I first got into RC, I was so scared to take my car apart and work on it. But then with repetition, I got a lot braver. And you're fixing to see I'm not the least little bit afraid to decimate this thing into a jillion pieces, because that's what we're fixing to do. All right. I was going to use these to show you it's possible, and it is, but it's slow. I have a set of ones that are fixed that I purchased off Amazon a few years ago. They weren't horribly expensive. They've got 1.5, 2.0, and 2.5. And almost everything on your 1/10 scale RCs you can remove with those 3 tools right there. So let's use these 3 tools, because it's a whole lot quicker than swapping tips out on the other. A lot of guys use power drills for this, and that's not a bad idea for disassembly. For putting them back together though, these are plastic parts. It's real easy to over tighten them. So when I use a power tool to put these together, I'll run it down till it's almost touching, and then tighten them by hand so that I don't have a problem there. All right, that's what we can take off from the top to get the front suspension off. Then we'll come down from the top and disconnect this linkage that goes from the servo to the steering components that are part of the truck. Get that off real quick. All right, that's loose. And we'll turn the truck upside down. We need to take these two out next. I think those look like 2 millimeter. Yep. So we'll take that out. Pull that out. And let's see. Guess we can go ahead and separate the front. Go ahead and separate the front bumper while we're here. That is a 2.5. Man, that one's tied all the way off. All right. Here comes that one. Now this one's got a problem. Hopefully you can see it in the camera. We'll move it over a little bit. See, it's full of dirt, and I could clean it, and that would probably be the best thing, but this is a little trick I use at the track or whatever. I take a smaller Allen key and just kind of run it around in there, or if you've got a steel pick or most anything that's smaller, just kind of run it around in there and loosen the dirt up, and normally like that you can get enough out to get a bite and get the screw to come out. When I edit this, there's probably going to be quite a few chunks that get eliminated because nobody wants to see me turn a jillion screws. Let's see what's got this front suspension tied on, because I think it comes off. Oh, there they are. Yeah, right in here there's 2 more screws. And when we remove those, move that one. And that one. All right, now we can remove the whole front suspension as one unit. And we can give it we can set the rest of the truck off to one side. And give the front suspension our full attention. Now if you'll look, the A-arms are held on the inside with pins that have little bitty E-clips on them. And E-clips are a royal pain in the butt because it's easy to send them flying across the room, and it's difficult to find them when you do. Well, let's see, first things first, let's get the wheels off of it. So we'll take off the lug nuts. On a 2-wheel drive, be sure and keep your wheel pushed up on the hex underneath while you're taking them off, or else you're in for a world of hurt when the little axle starts spinning around and you can't hold it. All right, lug nuts off. Now let's get the wheel off. wheel is in really good condition. A little cleanup and that's going to be ready to go back on. Now for the other side. All right, now we're just going to kind of inspect as we go. There's a lot of slop, but nothing really terrible. Yeah, there's some crunchiness in the bearings on this side. This side's fairly smooth, but not great. Everything feels pretty good, except for the fact that these shocks have kind of had it. So, we'll take our 2mm. Oh, that's a wrong screw there. That should be. May have a chance to talk about the different kinds of screws here in a second, because we'll pull that out. Oh yeah, that's all kinds of wrong. We're gonna have to do better there. And 2.5. I'm assuming this one is also wrong. I just hope it didn't mess up the shock tower. Now this is the correct part. Now Traxxas makes special screws for this. And there's a metal washer that's stuck to it right there. But that screw is correct for a Traxxas shock with that big shoulder on it, because that big shoulder fills the void in the top of the shock perfectly and holds it steady. Now, they do also supply some plastic spacers that your screw can go through that hold it properly, but this side didn't have either. It had a completely wrong screw stuck in it. Now let's come and grab one of these. I'm gonna get the shocks off of it. There's no particular order to this, just whatever fasteners you can get to and whatever your gut tells you want to take off next, just take them off. We have books and a whole internet to tell us how to put it together, so do not be afraid to just take the car apart. Shocks are off. Let's take off the bearing carriers. Oh, that's a long screw there. And if you look, it's a special screw. Try to get up there where you can see it well, but the threads only go down a little bit and then it's just a solid pin the rest of the way with no threads. It's also very corroded and very dirty. We're gonna see if we can polish that up and save it because we're on a budget. Now sometimes you've got a nut on the back of things, and ideally you'd have a wrench the right size handy, and we do this time. Of course, now I need 3 hands. Most of the time when you find nuts on an RC car, they are nylon locking, nylocks or nylon locking nuts. And they are very easy to remove by hand once you get them out to a certain point. But they're not coming out by hand until they get there. What is this? We have Phillips screws here. Those don't belong. Hope the shock towers weren't damaged with a wood screw or something. That would that'd bother me a little bit. But now I have to get a Phillips screwdriver out. Let's see what happens. Now, some of the cars, like Bandits, use Phillips hardware. So if they use Traxxas hardware with a Phillips head, everything will be all right. But if I flip this over and find out it's a wood screw, we may need a shock tower, a front shock tower. Because I'm not going to put Phillips hardware back in this. And oh, looky there, that makes me happy. That is good hardware. That may actually be made into the... Okay, I'm gonna have to do a little investigation. That may be made into that. But the fact that that's not just a wood screw makes me really happy. We'll take the other one off. This piece off. That was a mistake. So when I pull this, we'll have to pick up the screws. I think I see them all. Yeah, it looks like there were two, and I see both of them. Okay. Now I got that off. Here is a tricky part. That's an easy way, like I say, to lose hardware, because those E-clips like to go flying. But what we do, if you look, there's they're called E-clips because they kind of look like a lowercase e, but there's a tang that catches this pin has a groove in it. There's a tang here, here, and here that catch in it. So if you go here between the two tangs and you can get something if you can catch that little groove, you got it started walking out, and get your hand behind it, but be careful not to poke a hole in your hand with the screwdriver, because that is another thing that's easy to do with them. There's bound to be better ways to do this. And there it is. It's off. Anyway, That's an E-clip. These things have them on both ends, but luckily you only have to take them off one. You only have to take it off of one end to get the vehicle apart. I'd highly recommend leaving the other one in place. Look how dirty that is. It's gonna take a lot of cleaning and polishing before we put this thing back together. Now we're going to come in here and see if we can give that one a start. And we can. Now we're just gonna come over here and catch the point of it with the screwdriver. Oh, there it goes. It came off and didn't go flying. Y'all should really be impressed with that, because that was not, that's not a completely easy task. Now, alright, we got that started out. It's stuck in there pretty tight because, once again, it's dirty and corroded. So, take a pair of needle nose pliers. And that's another must if you're going to play with RC cars, is a pair of needle nose pliers, and not real big ones. The smaller ones work better because you end up needing to grab up in small places, and you never really need to grab anything all that hard. Anyway, we're just going to continue taking this apart until it is in all of the pieces we can break it down into. Let's take this apart. Playing with 10th scale, your 2mm wrench is going to get a workout about, I don't know, a vast majority of all the screws you take out, your 2mm tool is going to be the one that does the work. Okay. Like I say, we're taking this as far apart as we can, because there is a lot of dust falling out of this, and there is not very much grease anywhere, or oil or anything else that's gonna, I don't think this truck remembers what lubricant feels like. We're gonna have to remind it. Okay. That part's about as far down as I want to take it. All right, these little small screwdrivers, used to be companies gave away screwdrivers of roughly this size, but these are pretty handy. I'll show you how these hubs, Traxxas, Associated, most everybody, they're very similar. If the 12mm hub thing is plastic, then what you do is put your screwdriver in between that and the piece behind it, give it a little twist, turn it about halfway, give it a little twist, and it'll pop off. And then when it does, good grief, normally they kind of slide off at this point. This one's very tight. Okay, so we pull off the plastic hub, and you can see there's a slot in it. That slot snaps onto this pin, and that's what causes the wheel to turn at the same speed as this axle so that bearings can be used under it and it doesn't wear things out when you're driving it. So we'll push that out. That looks pretty good, actually. Then there's wheel bearings on either side of this. We'll push those out in a second, but first, we'll go ahead and separate this. This is another one of these pins with just a little bit of thread right under the head, and then it's just a smooth pin. Now that's apart. Now let's see about pushing out these bearings. Oh, they're not very tight at all. When you're pushing out bearings, I came through at an angle and I pushed on this side, and then this side, and then this side, and then this side, and kind of walk it out. And it'll come out much easier than if you try to just keep pushing on one side till it comes all the way out. And that bearing is, almost completely locked up. I can turn it, but it feels very gritty and crunchy, so that one's going to need to be replaced. Now let's check the other one. We'll push. Once again, push one side and then the other. And sometimes go 90 degrees away. This one is coming out slow. It's a very tight fit in the housing. Actually, this one's fitting more like it's supposed to. That one that's loose, was pretty sure the bearing was going to be bad. When it locked up, it spun in the housing and kind of spread it out. So we'll have to probably put a little drop of super glue on the outside diameter when we put it back together. And then the next person to go in will cuss me for doing that, but it ought to make the bearing happier while it's in there. Come on. There we go. It's out. And it is locked down completely. It's trash. But the bearing carriers are nice and aluminum, so we'll hang on to those. We'll take this off. And we won't go into the links. We'll do that when we put it back together. What the different links are called and what their jobs are. Okay, we're on that nut. Okay, flip that over. Then my 2.5 will come and get it. Not wanting to come out. So let's take these two off. Looks like back to the 2.5. Let's see, that's on the bottom of the skid plate, and it is a countersunk screw. Once again, don't worry about this big pile of hardware. You don't have to remember where it all goes. There is a book that has pictures that'll show you where everything goes. So we'll just put it back together one piece at a time. All right, the shock tower, it's in decent shape, but it's filthy. These are your steering bell cranks is what they call these. And once again, decent shape, but filthy. So now we're going to take this part apart. It's the same as the other side, so we're not going to do a whole lot of talking about it. And there's going to be a lot of jump cuts in this, so y'all just forgive me, because, like I say, you don't want to see every second of this. This is a bit time consuming. This is not hard at all, but it is tedious. All right, let's check these bearings. That one's just crap, so it's the best of the three that I've checked so far. And this one's about the same. Very crunchy, definitely needs to be replaced. But these parts are nice, so we'll definitely reuse those. Once again, be not afraid. Don't be afraid. These are all, it's all good, and we're going to get it back together, and it's going to be easy. Now these I knew were going to be Phillips. I don't think Traxxas ever bothered to make them with the hex head. But once more, that's a special screw. That one's very unusual. You don't want to lose these because there ain't but one place to get them, and that's Traxxas. You're not going to find that at Home Depot anytime soon. there's really no need to take this apart. It doesn't move, so there's no need to get any lubricant up inside of it. All we got to do is clean it and put it back together. Now, as far as cleaning goes, you can use toothbrushes and get you a little metal bowl or a small plastic bucket or something and put some solvent in there and get you a toothbrush and go to town on it and use a soapy water for all the plastics and get it clean. And that works pretty good, but I have an ultrasonic cleaner and I'm gonna use that to get these clean. Okay guys, here are the parts all cleaned up. The ultrasonic cleaner I put these in the basket for like 30 minutes and they came out looking like that. The hardware, some of that is going to require the old toothbrush or small wire brush and a little solvent trick because there was some rust there and there's not a whole lot that the ultrasonic can do with rust on hardware. But all those plastics, very clean, very shiny, look almost new. The aluminum parts came out really good. This is going to be a really good looking car when we get done with it. Anyway, that's what I've got for this time, and I hope to see you in a couple of days. Thanks a bunch for watching.